Hello and welcome, my name is Hayden Falzon and I would like to apologise for the disruption in my video schedules, but I've been working on a lot of things lately and I just had to put this on hold for a bit. But we're back now and we're going to be looking at how to get polygroups into Zbrush from Blender. So in Zbrush terms, polygroups are essentially different sections of our model. Now in Blender, to illustrate this point, I have a model here made up of different parts. So torso, legs, head, hair, things like that. Now I want to bring all these parts into Zbrush, but as separate polygroups. If I was to just bring this model in as is right now, as just an OBJ with no extra settings pressed, Zbrush would interpret it as a single mesh, and as a result we may not have the fine control over the model in Zbrush as we would with polygroups. Now our first step is to select all our objects that we're going to be exporting to Zbrush, and then we want to left click on a primary object that's going to become our active object, and then we're going to press Ctrl J. So all those objects are now part of the same mesh. Now we want to rename this to something appropriate. Now this is a character from an animation that I'm working on currently, and I'm just going to call this Oren Hearthstone, which is the character's name. Now that we have a single object, we want to go up to our Objects Data tab, as this is where we will find our vertex group data in Blender, as we want to create some new vertex groups. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over to the plus sign, press it, and it's going to create a new vertex group, and then we can name that whatever we want. So in this case, this is going to be the vertex group for the lower body, and I can select the lower body because it's a separate object by just pressing L while my mouse is over it, which will select all the geometry that is connected. And then I'm just going to hit assign, making sure that my strength is at 1. So now we can check that our vertex group has been assigned properly by deselecting everything by pressing A, and then selecting our vertex group, and then pressing the button select. As you can see, when we do that, our selection comes back up, so we know that our vertex group has been assigned properly. So now we're going to repeat those steps for all the other separate objects within our mesh, as these are what will become the polygroups in Zbrush. Now that we have our vertex groups created, we can now export our object. So we're going to go up to our file, and then we're going to select export, and then export as wavefront OBJ. You can save this in any directory, just make sure that it's appropriate and that it conforms to a file naming convention, as organization in 3D is one of the most key and most powerful things that you can get right. Because if you've got poor organization skills, like I do most of the time, after we have found a appropriate place to save our OBJ, we want to come down here and press selection only, and then we want to turn off write materials if you have a material, unless of course you want to keep your material, but it's not essential. And then the most important thing that we want checked is polygroups. We want to make sure that that is checked. So now we can export, and this may take a while depending on the complexity of your mesh. It looks like it was completed, so now we can jump over to Zbrush. With Zbrush open, I'm just going to double my document size, and then I'm going to press import, and then navigate to where I've exported my mesh. Upon importing, you'll be given an option such as this. Just pick quads and triangles compatible with the Z2. Then you want to drag out your new object. You can press Shift to snap it, and then as soon as you drag it out, you want to press T. Okay, now that you have your object in Zbrush, we can now see if our polygroups actually were assigned properly. We can do this by pressing the option Line Fill in our Options menu, or by pressing Shift F. As you can see, when I do that, the polygons are different colors, which means that they have been assigned to different polygroups, although in this case the colors aren't that drastic, so it may be difficult to see on YouTube, but otherwise it is there, and we now know that our polygroups have been successfully imported from Blender. Now because we have polygroups in Zbrush, we can press Shift and Control at the same time and click on a part of our object, and it should isolate that part of the object. To get all of our polygroups back, we just have to press Control and Shift outside of our mesh, and it should bring back all of our polygroups. This is a great way if you're working on different parts of the mesh, but an even better way is to split up all of the polygroups into their own subtools. So for those Blender users who don't know what a subtool is, in Zbrush terms, a subtool is just a separate object within the document, basically. Zbrush is very strange. It has its origins back in 2.5D illustration, and it tends to keep a lot of those little quirks, but it's still one of the most powerful softwares in the 3D industry. So, to break up our object into its own separate subtools according to its polygroups, we want to come down to our subtool palette, and then with our subtool selected, we want to come to split. If that isn't open, you can just press split, and then we want to press group splits. And then this will say this is not an undoable operation, which means you will not be able to undo this, but that's okay. So we'll just press OK. And now, as you'll see in our subtool palette, our object has been split up into its separate subtools according to their polygroup. So this is incredibly powerful if we're working on each piece individually. So if I want to work on the lower body, I can now do that, and I can then also turn off the visibility of all the other subtools quite easily. So it's just a really good and easy way to manage your file. And there we go. This is how we add an object from Blender into Zbrush with polygroups. I hope this tutorial has helped anyone who has had this question, or anyone who has had trouble importing objects from Blender to Zbrush. And I hope that it has enlightened you on the many different ways that you can help speed up your workflow. If you've enjoyed this video, or if this video has helped you in any way, please give it a like. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. You can also follow me on Twitter @FalsonFantasy if you're interested in any of the fictional works that I've been working on, but I digress. Thank you so much for watching. This is Hayden Falson from FalsonFantasy.com signing off.